Welcome to Model 2 of the IELTS Academic Writing Task 1 tutorial, Part 2. If you have not looked at Part 1, which focuses on understanding the task, you should do so before viewing Part 2. You should also look at Model 1 to see another approach to writing about the task. In Part 1 of the tutorial on housing prices, we examined this IELTS writing task. Before examining the introductory paragraph, let's read it first. The graph looks at changes to house prices in certain developed countries every 2 years from 2000 to 2010, while the table compares house prices and wages in Australia. Now let's examine the paragraph. Your overview should generally refer to all the data presented. One complex sentence should be adequate for your opening paragraph, or maybe 2 at most. Here's the second paragraph, which we'll now read. Of the 4 countries, Australia had the biggest increase over the 10-year period of 120%. With an increase of about 70%, the UK had the second highest growth in prices by 2010. In 2008, however, the UK's house prices had increased by over 100%, while Australia's increase was less than 60% at the same time. Note that Australia and the UK are grouped here, although any logical grouping would be fine, such as Australia and Japan in Model 1. Note the dates and percentages they used in the description. Using some data to describe the information is vital. Numbers and percentages do not always need to be exact. For example, over 100%, less than 60%. Here's the third paragraph, which continues the description of the line graph. Canada, with growth of 40% over the period, had the most consistent increase in price. Japan, on the other hand, had a decline in house prices of 40%. It was the only country of the 4 where house prices fell over the 10-year period. The other 2 countries, Canada and Japan, are dealt with for explicit contrast. Canada had the most consistent growth, 40%, while Japan had a house price decline of 40%. Note also that this is a main feature, as Japan was the only country where house prices fell. Now we will look at the paragraph on the table. The table shows that the average house price in Australia more than doubled over the 10-year period. In 2000, the average house price was $250,000, which was 570% of the annual average wage. In 2010, however, house prices were $525,000, or 780% of the average annual wage. Note that not all columns are mentioned, as sufficient information can be conveyed from the first and the last 2. And finally, here's the concluding paragraph. In a period when house prices fell significantly in Japan, house prices became much more expensive for the average Australian house buyer. Sometimes it's possible to round off your description with some statement of comparison. Make sure, though, that this comes from the data and not from your personal knowledge. That concludes part 2 of the tutorial, Writing Model 2. If you want more help with your IELTS, please go to our site www.eslforfree.com.